Hello and very good evening to all our viewers. This is WION Wallet. I am Sumit Chaturvedi. Let's see what is making headlines in the world of business this evening. India's Tata Group might be undergoing massive restructuring. Tata Group chairman N. Chandrasekaran is assembling a team of deal makers to revamp some of group's biggest businesses. Competition in the Indian car market is set to get intense, with Korean auto giant Kia planning an aggressive foray. Kia is likely to launch 3 cars over the next 3 years here. A day after Indian telecom regulator TRAI accused Apple of data colonization, TRAI will shortly begin a consultation process to address the issues of ownership of data. And the investor sentiment in the eurozone remained stable in August, buoyed by strong current conditions, but future expectations have slumped. Straight to our top story, which is coming from Indian auto market. Competition in the Indian car market is set to get intense, with Korean auto giant Kia planning an aggressive foray here. Kia has decided to line up a strong product portfolio and will introduce 3 cars between 2019 and 2022. The vehicles will include a mid-sized SUV and a sedan, and Kia hopes to achieve annual sales of 3 lakh cars over the next 3 years, following its debut in 2019. The company, an affiliate of Hyundai Motors, is setting up a greenfield facility in Andhra Pradesh that would see cumulative investments of over $2 billion between Kia and its suppliers. Indian market is already witnessing a strong competition in almost all sections of the auto industry, and Kia will fuel that further. And second story coming from India, where Tata chairman Natarajan Chandrasekaran is assembling a team of deal makers to refocus some of group's biggest businesses, expand its financial services and consumer businesses, and sell or merge dozens of smaller units, which means massive restructuring will happen in Tata Group. Now, as many as 1/3 of group's 100+ units could go as Chandrasekaran and his team try to balance the need to prune unprofitable businesses. At the 149-year-old group with the Tata family legacy of social responsibility, Chandra, as the 54-year-old chairman, is called by his colleagues. He has set his primary task to bring more focus to a conglomerate. The 6 largest listed Tata companies account for about 90% of group's market capitalization and total revenue. Few group companies are doing well, including IT services company TCS and auto services. But some sectors are not doing very well, and they are under pressure, including the one like Tata Steel. Tata Group's steel business is one which is currently undergoing a lot of pressure. Last year, they tried very hard to sell it, but nobody was ready to buy the steel business as far as Tata Group's steel business is concerned. And gold imports in India have risen in July on arrival of some delayed shipments booked ahead of implementation of new goods and services tax on the 1st of last month. The inbound purchases rose to 53.4 metric ton last month from 22 tons a year earlier. Sequentially, imports of metal fell from 72 tons in June. Total imports of gold during January to July jumped more than 2.5 times to 625 tons. While traders and dealers stocked up on gold inventories ahead of levy of National Goods and Services Tax on fears of a higher duty, demand is expected to slow in the second half of 2017. This is because buyers will now take time to transition to the new regime. The World Gold Council said last week that second half of year will see lesser demand of gold, but consumption is estimated to remain below a 5-year average of 855 tons. So imports in India's second largest gold market in the world have doubled in July. Gold demand is expected to slow down going forward. Imports rise on arrival of delayed shipments that happened in July, but going forward it will come down because of GST. The shipments booked ahead of GST implementation contributed a lot in the month of July. GST, its goods and services tax, it was levied on July 1st. And inbound purchases of gold rose to 53.4 metric tons in July 2017, which was last month. And India has imported around 22 tons of gold in July 2016, so it has doubled over the July last year. The consumption is expected to remain below a 5-year average as far as Indian markets are concerned, but India will still remain one of the largest markets as far as gold is concerned. The gold consumption will be in range of around 650 to 750 tons annually. That is a huge amount. And let's talk about telecom market in India. That will their TRAI, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, India's telecom sector regulator, will shortly begin a consultation process to address the issues of ownership, privacy and security of data which flows through the network of telecom companies like Bharti Airtel, Reliance Jio and Vodafone in India. A consultation paper kickstarting the consultation process could be issued within this week. At the end of the process, TRAI will issue recommendations to the telecom department, which will take a final decision on implementation. Telecom regulators' move to float the consultation paper appears to be partly triggered by its displeasure with Apple, which is yet to allow TRAI's Do Not Disturb or DND app to be listed on its app store. Now, despite discussions being on for nearly a year, TRAI's DND app, launched in June, aims to have control over unwanted phone calls and messages. The app can track the call and message logs of a registered user and suggest which ones are spam, which can then be reported to the service providers for action. R.S. Sharma, the chairman of TRAI, in an interview said that Apple is a data colonizer and anti-consumer practices are being clearly done by Apple, as the company has not allowed customers to pass on details about unwanted calls and unwanted messages to authorities as well as their mobile operators. So clearly data ownership to be controlled in India. In many countries, data ownership norms are being framed, and here also in India, data ownership will be controlled. TRAI will start a consultation process on this, where it will consult with consumers, telecom operators and other parties. The consultation paper could be issued this week. After this, they will ask for comments and thereafter rules will be framed. TRAI will issue recommendations on it later. Those recommendations will be binding on all parties concerned. The Telecom Department of India will take a final decision on implementation of these rules. And TRAI, the telecom regulator, has accused Apple of being a data colonizer. Apple has not allowed customers to pass on details about unwanted calls, and TRAI, which is Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, is clearly unhappy with this, and that's why new rules will come very soon. Let's take some news from India's share market, where India has imposed trading restrictions on 162 listed entities identified as shell companies, a surprise move that analysts said was part of broad crackdown on illegal offshore transfers and tax evasion. The announcement by the Securities Exchange Board of India, or SEBI, did not say what illegal activities the companies may have been engaged in. The restrictions, however, include limiting trading in the affected companies to once a month and curbs in the trading of shares held by promoters and directors of the companies. The The government has seen going after companies it suspects of engaging in irregular transactions after a ban on high-value currency notes late last year, including transferring money abroad illegally or black money and evading taxes. Some analysts also said that the trading restrictions had taken investors by surprise. This is another issue that is spooking markets, and that's why markets are in red or are under pressure from the last 1 to 2 trading sessions. The trading curbs on shell companies in India has been imposed. The SEBI has imposed these restrictions, and the trading restrictions have been imposed on 162 listed entities in India. Well, these entities were identified as shell companies which were being used for money laundering or accumulating black money. The move is part of a broad crackdown at tax evasion by SEBI. Restrictions these include limiting trading in shell firms, which is the first step on this, and trading restrictions actually investors by surprise, and that led to fall in share price of many companies, including these shell companies also. And news coming from India's national carrier Air India. Changes in the food provided on board its aircraft will help Air India save rupees 20 crore or 200 million annually. The government said that Air India had in July decided not to provide non-vegetarian meals to economy class passengers on domestic routes in a move to reduce expenses. Well, there have been other cost-cutting measures as well, such as meal schedule, rationalization of dry stores and ancillary items. Altogether, the airline is expected to save rupees 20 crore or 200 million because of changes made to its catering policy. Air India CMD Ashwini Lohani said that national carrier is likely to take more such measures in order to rationalize cost. Last year, Air India replaced vegetarian and non-vegetarian sandwiches with veg hot meals on flights of up to 90 minutes duration. It had also decided to strike off both tea and coffee from its lunch and dinner menu. This was done to save costs. National carrier Air India has, however, a different strategy for its international flights after it was told by Civil Aviation Ministry. And Air India will lead to saving of 200 million rupees on veg food items. Only veg food items will be served by an airline, Air India. While veg food will be for economy class passengers or on domestic routes. Other cost-cutting measures have already been taken, by Air India. And national carrier is likely to take such more measures going forward. Air India is reeling under a debt of around 50,000 crore rupees, and government is adopting a number of measures to bring it back to profitability. But government has already given an approval for this investing stake in Air India. And staying with aviation space, where a raft of airline policy changes prompted by a high-profile case of a man who was injured while being dragged off a plane in Chicago earlier this year have had a dramatic result. Airlines in US have reported the lowest level of involuntarily passengers bumping in history. The ticketed passengers who were refused a seat on flights fell to 44 million per passenger from April through June, the Department of Transport said in an email statement. That was the lowest quarterly rate since the agency began collecting the data in 1995. The rate was 29% lower than the same period a year earlier, when 62 customers per million were bumped. According to department, airline executives were hauled before Congress and carriers raced to change their policies after a man was injured on April 9 while being hauled from a United Airlines plane in Chicago earlier this year. The incident was captured on video and widely broadcast on television and social media. David Dow, a doctor from Kentucky in US, suffered a concussion, a broken nose and damaged teeth. The lawyer said that he was hired days after the incident after refusing to leave his seat. Dow, which the airline needed, he wanted to reach to its patient as early as possible. Well, that was a big issue, big case earlier in Chicago, and now airlines, the case of people getting bumped off the airline has come down. Staying with the global story, and Nissan Motor of Japan has agreed to pay $97.7 million to settle class action claims of consumer economic loss in the United States tied to recall of 4.4 million vehicles with Takata airbag inflators. However, Nissan said in a statement it was not admitting fault under the settlement. The settlement is similar to others reached with major automakers in June. A federal judge in Miami granted preliminary approval to settlements with Toyota Motor, Subaru, BMW and Mazda Motor, totaling $553 million and affecting 15.8 million vehicles with Takata inflators. At least 18 deaths and 180 injuries worldwide have been tied to defect that led Takata Corp to file for bankruptcy protection in June. Takata inflators can explode with excessive force, unleashing metal shrapnel inside cars and trucks. All the settlements reached so far include an outreach program to contact owners of recalled vehicles and to address the low number of completed repairs. And news from the business of entertainment, where Walt Disney will stop providing new movies to Netflix starting in 2019 and launch its own streaming services as the world's biggest entertainment company tries to capture digital viewers who are dumping traditional television. Disney's defection is a calculated gamble that the company can generate more profit in the long run from its own subscription service rather than renting out its movies to services like Netflix. Netflix and rivals such as Amazon and Time Warner's HBO are spending billions of dollars to buy and produce their own content and stream it straight to consumers. Disney's entry into a crowded subscription streaming market at the cost of technology to support its own online services could weigh on earnings. And Disney has planned its own streaming service, coming into a service that is clearly now dominated by Amazon and other player Netflix. Disney has planned its own streaming service. Walt Disney is world's biggest entertainment company and it will have a far-reaching impact on Walt Disney's profit. Disney is trying to capture digital viewers dumping TV. That is the big focus of company at this moment. The shares of Netflix and Disney both fell yesterday in US market after the news broke. And Disney is already having a direct-to-consumer model in UK. Now, investor sentiment in the eurozone has remained stable in August, buoyed by strong current conditions, but future expectations have slumped amid growing concerns about the US economy and the potential impact of a widening car emissions scandal. The Frankfurt-based Centix Research Group's Eurozone Index edged lower to 27 points from 28 points in July, in line with the mid-range forecast of 27.8 in poll of analysts. But expectations fell to 16 points from 19.8 points in July, in what the group called a worrying sign. Centix said the investor sentiment index for the US dropped to 14 in August from 14.8 in July. So Eurozone's investor morale is stable now after Brexit and after a lot of troubles which Eurozone saw over the last few months, but the future expectations are dropping. A survey has said that there are growing concerns about the US economy. The survey also said that investor Eurozone can be impacted by the potential impact of car emissions scandal that is weighing on Eurozone economy. The Centix research has actually put the Eurozone group index lower than earlier. And index is lower to 27.7 points in August from 28.3 points in July. Their expectations, they fell to 16 points in August from 19.8 in July. The Eurozone investor morale is stable. Investor sentiment index for the US has dropped to 14.1 in August. Investors are growing increasingly cautious, though there are many reasons for this. and index for Germany has also fallen for a third consecutive month. The German index was down to 33.2 in August from 37.5 in July. And news from electric car maker Tesla, where Tesla now wants to raise $1.5 billion to help with the rollout of its relatively affordable Model 3 electric car. Elon Musk's company says it hoped to raise the cash in a bond offering to further strengthen its balance sheet during this period of rapid scaling with the launch of Model 3 and for general corporate purposes. The move comes a week after hedge fund manager warned that Model 3 could cause cash problems for Tesla, as the company was currently only capitalized for the next 3 quarters. And the model will naturally require more scale than earlier Tesla vehicles. And there is a fight among Europe and other countries in Europe that are in race to overtake each other for Brexit bank jobs. The latest to join race is French capital Paris, that is aiming to beat Germany's Frankfurt to become European Union's main financial centre after Britain leaves. The French finance minister has said the country will take the difficult decisions and will lower French taxes to make the country more attractive since the UK voted last year to abandon the European Union. France has been fighting with Germany and Ireland to grab a part of financial industry that plans to relocate out of London. But stiff rules on firing workers, high and volatile taxes have marred French efforts. It's only 5 years since French earlier president came to power, declaring that financiers were his enemies and slapped on a 75% rate for top earners. Let's talk about markets all over the world. They are under pressure today. The main reason is the overall tensions that are there within US and North Korea. The geopolitical tensions weighed on Indian markets as well. Sensex was down today by over 216 points and Nifty also is below 10,000 mark. So clearly there are many tensions as far as US and North Korea are concerned. There are, we can say that barbs going on between US and North Korea. Tweets are also there, and that's why the overall markets are spooked by this announcement. There was some profit booking though in Indian markets, and in India the markets have come down today. To talk more on markets, we are joined by Mustafa Nadeem, our analyst for today. Good evening to you, Mr. Nadeem. First of all, how do you see this panning out, the overall tensions panning out over the next few days?
See, currently today the market has broken an immediate support level of 9928 and 9908. So now technically this correction would take markets to level of 9850 and 9810 level, and which I think was due because overall the kind of rally which we have seen, so there should be some correction, the gap should be filled. So I think the geopolitical reason, the geopolitical tension is one of the reason, and again the market has come down to filling the gaps which had during the rally. So there is no such panic. The situation of panic is not there, but yes, the investors and traders has to be cautious at higher levels, and the market may correct to a level of 9850, 9810.
Mr. Nadeem, good time to buy certain stocks and certain sectors. How would you rate those sectors? How would you place your bets on certain sectors? Is it good time to buy certain stocks?
Yes, we can see the defensive sectors are the best in current market scenario. So FMCG and IT are on my radars. Infosys is looking a good buy at current levels. On the banking side, Kotak Bank is again a good buy, and on entertainment, Z Entertainment looks good at current level, and we can see 3 to 4% return in these 3 stocks going forward.
And global markets, what is happening there, Mr. Nadeem? So global markets are also spooked by this particular geopolitical tensions. Going forward, how do you see them reacting to all of that, and what big factors should be looked out for going forward?
See, now this is the time, since market are trading at such higher levels, the market has start factoring in the geopolitical risk. Previously it was being ignored because the fundamentals and the growth story was so high, that it was weighing above the geopolitical risk. But now, since the market are at such high levels, the geopolitical risk has started to push the markets down. But I think the overall growth story and the growth part is intact, and the things would be settled, and again the market would retrace back to higher levels globally also. And the things which has to be looked upon are we have US inflation numbers tomorrow, which would again give a direction on how the inflation and overall growth would be. So I think this is the trigger the market would have tomorrow. Other than this, the data would be strong. So I think as soon as the rhetoric between US and North Korea comes down, the market would retrace back to higher levels.
All right, Mr. Naveen, thank you for talking to us and getting us all these details. Well, that's all today we have in this edition of WION Wallet. For more news and updates, stay tuned to WION, and thanks for watching us.